I still remember the sound, a sharp, ugly metallic screech that made the train jerk and then die in the middle of the night. It didn't slow down gently. It just stopped, like someone had yanked the plug out of the wall. The lights flickered, went out for a second, then came back on, weaker somehow, with that tired hospital-like glow. That was the moment I knew this was going to be a long night. I'd taken the night train almost by accident. My flight was canceled, the bus was sold out, and I just needed to leave. It didn't really matter where. Staying where I was felt impossible. I bought the ticket last minute, barely thinking it through. The compartment was nearly empty. Just me and him. We hadn't talked much before the breakdown. Just the usual polite exchanges. Bottom bunk free? Yeah, go ahead. Thanks. His name was Andrew. I learned that later. At the time, he was just the guy across from me. Mid-30s, maybe a bit older. Dark jacket, neatly trimmed stubble, the tired eyes of someone who'd been running on autopilot for too long. He was scrolling through his phone, occasionally glancing out the window at the black nothingness rushing past. And then the train broke down. The conductor walked through the carriage with that carefully neutral expression people use when they know the news is bad, but don't want to panic anyone. Technical issue, she said calmly. We're stopped for now. No exact time yet. No exact time on a night train usually means hours. We were stuck together in a compartment that suddenly felt much smaller. The familiar rhythm of the wheels was gone, replaced by an unsettling silence, broken only by distant voices from other cars and the occasional metallic clank somewhere outside. Well, this is perfect, Andrew said finally, exhaling through a half-smile. Stranded in the middle of nowhere. I let out a quiet laugh. A motionless night train. Feels almost philosophical. He looked at me more closely then, like he was actually seeing me for the first time. You do philosophy on trains often? Only when my life starts falling apart, I said, surprising myself with how honest it sounded. He nodded slowly. Yeah, that tracks. We felt quiet again, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that waits for something to happen. Like the train hadn't just broken down mechanically. Like it had forced both of us to stop, too. After about half an hour, it was obvious neither of us was going to sleep. People were pacing the corridor in socks, carrying tea, complaining, laughing too loudly. The night had its own strange energy now. Andrew took off his jacket, hung it neatly on the hook, and shifted more comfortably on his bunk. So, he said, since we're stuck, how about we tell each other the truth? I raised an eyebrow. The truth. Versions of it, he clarified. Who we tell the world we are, and who we actually are. Night train. Broken engine. Feels like the right setting. I looked at him, and something in my chest tightened. I wanted that conversation more than I wanted sleep, more than I wanted the train to start moving again. Deal, I said, but no heroic backstories. He smiled, really smiled this time. Then you start. So I did. I told him my name was John, and I started talking, not realizing that this random stranger would, in just a few hours, know more about me than people I'd shared years of my life with. I don't even remember deciding what to say. The words just came out, like they'd been waiting for the lights to dim and the train to stop moving. My name's John, I said. I work in marketing. Or, I did until last week. Andrew didn't interrupt. He just leaned back, arms crossed loosely, giving me that quiet, steady attention that makes it easier to keep going. I quit, I continued. Or maybe I was pushing to quitting. Hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. 12-hour days, fake smiles, pretending I cared about things that felt more and more empty. At some point, I realized I was exhausted all the time, but not in a way sleep could fix. I laughed softly, shaking my head. So yeah, night train. No destination that really matters. That's me right now. Andrew nodded, slow and thoughtful. Sounds familiar, he said. That feeling where your life looks fine on paper, but you're barely holding it together inside. I glanced at him. You too. He hesitated for just a second, the smallest pause, then sighed and looked down at his hands. I'm into you. I fix things, he said. Or at least, that's what people think. I'm an engineer. I get called when something's broken and expected to make it work again. He let out a short breath. Funny thing is, I'm great at fixing machines. People? Not so much. There was something in his voice, not bitterness, Exactly, but resignation. The kind that comes after you've tried and failed a few times and stopped being surprised by it. I'm on this train because my partner and I finally called it, he went on. 7 years. No big fight. Just quiet disappointment piling up until there was nothing left to say. I swallowed. 7 years. That wasn't just a breakup. That was a life. Sorry, I said. He shrugged. Don't be. It needed to end. I just didn't realize how empty everything would feel afterward. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The train hummed faintly, some distant system still alive, even if we weren't moving. Somewhere down the corridor, someone laughed. Too loud, a little hysterical. Can I ask you something? Andrew said eventually. Depends how honest you're planning to be, I replied. He smirked. Fair. Are you running from something or towards something? The question landed heavier than I expected. I stared at the window, and my own reflection layered over the darkness outside. I think, I said slowly, I'm running from the version of myself I kept pretending was enough. Andrew studied me. That takes guts. Feels more like cowardice most days. Still, he said, most people never even admit it to themselves. Something shifted then. Not dramatically, just subtly. Like the air between us had warmed a few degrees. We weren't strangers swapping small talk anymore. We were two men awake in the middle of the night, telling truths we usually kept locked up. The lights flickered again, and this time they stayed dimmer. Guess the train's tired too, I joked. Andrew smiled, but his eyes stayed on me a second longer than necessary. You know, he said, it's strange. If this train hadn't broken down, we'd probably have slept the whole way and never spoken. Yeah, I agreed. We'd have arrived exactly where we were going, unchanged. He nodded. Instead, we're stuck and talking. And maybe, I added quietly, that's not the worst thing. He held my gaze. For a moment, the world felt very small, just the compartment, the low light, his steady breathing, the awareness of another body close by. Outside, the night pressed in. Inside, something was beginning to move, and the train still wasn't going anywhere. Time stretched in that strange, elastic way it only does at night. No one knew when the train would start moving again, and eventually people stopped asking. Complaints faded into resigned silence. The corridor quieted down. Even the laughter disappeared. Andrew shifted on his bunk, rubbing his palms together like he was warming them up. Can I admit something kind of stupid? He asked. Those are usually the best kinds, I said. He exhaled through his nose, almost a laugh. I almost didn't take this train. I stood on the platform for 10 minutes, debating whether to just go back home. Empty apartment, boxes half-packed, everything echoing. And yet, I said, here you are. Yeah. He glanced at me, and weirdly, I'm glad. That honesty hit me harder than I expected. There was no flirting in it, no performance, just a simple truth offered without armor. I leaned back against the wall of the compartment. I get that. I almost stayed too. Canceled the ticket twice before actually committing. Andrew raised an eyebrow. Seriously? Seriously. I kept thinking, what am I even doing? Running away in the middle of the night like some dramatic teenager. And now I'm stuck on a broken train, oversharing with a stranger named Andrew. He smiled at that. A soft one. Best kind of stranger, I hope. We fell into another quiet stretch, but this one felt comfortable. Like we didn't need to fill every gap with words anymore. I became aware of small things. The faint smell of soap on his skin, the way his knee was angled slightly toward me, the steady rhythm of his breathing. You know, he said eventually, voice lower now. When my relationship ended, everyone kept telling me to get back out there. Date, download apps, distract myself, and I couldn't. Not because I wasn't lonely, but because I didn't want something shallow to cover up something real. I nodded slowly. That makes sense. He looked at me, searching my face. What about you? Dating? Or is that a sore subject? I hesitated, not because I didn't want to answer, but because the answer felt like another step forward. I've dated, I said. Men who look perfect on paper. Nice, stable, safe. I paused, and I kept waiting to feel chosen. Not just liked, not convenient, actually seen. Andrew's expression softened. That's a brutal kind of waiting. Yeah, I said quietly. Eventually, you start wondering if the problem is you. His voice was gentle when he replied. Or maybe you just haven't been in the right place. Or with the right person. The words hung between us. Not heavy, just present. The lights flickered again, brighter this time, and somewhere far down the line, Metal groaned. Ender glanced toward the door. Sounds like they're trying to wake the train back up. Part of me hopes it takes a little longer, I admitted before I could stop myself. He looked back at me, something unreadable in his eyes. Yeah, he said softly. Me too. Our knees brushed barely. It could have been an accident. Neither of us moved away. In the silence that followed, I realized something unsettling and comforting all at once. I didn't feel like I was passing time anymore. I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The train gave a low, tired shudder, like it was testing its own weight. Somewhere outside, metal scraped against metal again, louder this time. A few muffled cheers drifted in from another carriage, premature optimism spreading down the line. Andrew and I both noticed it. The sense that our borrowed time might be running out. He cleared his throat. Funny how a breakdown can feel like a pause button, he said. Like the universe forcing you to sit with yourself for a minute. Or with someone else. I added. He looked at me, really looked this time. Not scanning, not polite, present. Yeah, that too. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It felt deliberate. Like neither of us wanted to be the one to break it with something meaningless. Can I be honest again? He asked. You've been setting a high standard, I replied. Go for it. Andrew shifted closer, elbows resting on his knees now. The distance between us was suddenly very measurable. I don't usually open up like this, he said, especially not with someone I met a few hours ago on a train. Same, I said. I usually save my emotional vulnerability for therapy sessions I cancel at the last minute. That earned a quiet laugh from him, easing the tension just enough. But he continued, more serious now. There's something about tonight. About you. It feels uncomplicated. The words settled into my chest. Uncomplicated, I repeated. That's rare. He nodded. With my ex, everything became a negotiation. Every feeling had to be justified, explained, minimized. He paused. Right now, I don't feel like I have to do that. I swallowed. My mouth felt dry. You don't, I said. At least not with me. Our eyes locked again, and this time neither of us looked away. I became acutely aware of how close we were. The heat from his body, the way his knee pressed lightly against mine now, not accidentally, deliberately. You know, I said quietly, if this were a movie, this would be the part where something big happens. Andrew smiled, but it was softer than before. Movies always rush it. True, I agreed. They don't leave room for the in-between. The in-between is usually the best part, he said. Another jolt ran through the train, stronger this time. The lights brightened fully, steady now. A distant horn sounded, followed by scattered applause. Andrew exhaled, almost disappointed. Looks like the pause button's about to wear off. Yeah, I said, though my voice didn't match the words. For a moment, neither of us moved. Like if we stayed perfectly still, the train might reconsider. Then Andrew did something small but brave. He reached out and rested his hand on the edge of my bunk. Not touching me, not quite, just close enough that I could feel the intention. I'm glad it broke down, he said, even if just for this. I felt my chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Me too. The train lurched, finally rolling forward, slow at first, then steadier. The world outside the window came back to life, dark shapes sliding past, the rhythm returning like nothing had ever been wrong. But something had changed. Andrew's hand was still there. Mine hovered for half a second, then covered it. Neither of us spoke. The train moved on, and so did we, just not in the way we'd expected. The train settled into its rhythm again, like nothing unusual had happened, as if it hadn't just stopped the world for a few hours and let two strangers step out of their lives. Andrew slowly pulled his hand back, not abruptly, not awkwardly, just enough to acknowledge that motion had returned, that reality was creeping in again. I felt the absence of his touch more than I expected. Well, he said quietly, clearing his throat, guess we're officially moving again. Yeah, I replied. Hard to believe. We both smiled, but there was something underneath it now. A shared awareness. Like we crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, even if nothing big had technically happened. I checked my phone. No signal. No notifications. The world had gone on without me, and for once, I didn't feel anxious about it. So, I said, "Where are you actually headed?" "Berlin," Andrew answered. "Word transfer. Fresh start, apparently." He made a face. "You?" "Same city," I said. "Different reason. I grew up not far from there. Thought I'd go back for a while. Figure things out." "That's kind of a coincidence," he said. "Yeah, or the universe doubling down." He laughed softly, then studied me for a moment. "Do you believe in that kind of thing?" "Timing?" I asked. "Accidental meetings?" "Yeah." I thought about it. About canceled flights, last-minute tickets, a broken train in the middle of the night. I said. But tonight's making a decent argument. The corridor outside our compartment grew quieter as people finally drifted off to sleep. The lights dimmed again, intentionally this time. A softer, warmer glow. Andrew hesitated, then said, "Can I ask you something a little selfish? After tonight? You've earned it." He smiled. "When we get there, would you want to stay in touch?" My answer came too quickly to be anything but honest. Yes. Something eased in his shoulders, like he'd been bracing for disappointment without realizing it. "Good," he said. "I didn't want this to be one of those nights you look back on and think, that was nice but unreal." "It feels pretty real to me," I said. He met my eyes again, and this time there was no hesitation. Just warmth. Curiosity. Something quietly hopeful. The train rocked gently, lulling, intimate in a way only night travel can be. Eventually, Andrew yawned and rubbed his face. "We should probably try to sleep," he said. "Morning's going to come fast." "Probably," I agreed, though neither of us moved right away. He climbed up to his bunk, pausing halfway. "John." "Yeah." "I'm really glad you were in that compartment." I smiled up at him. "Me too, Andrew." He lay down, turning slightly, so he was facing me from above. I stayed where I was, staring up at the dim ceiling, listening to the train carry us forward. I didn't know what would happen next, if this would turn into something real or just something meaningful. But for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of the uncertainty. I closed my eyes, the motion of the train steady beneath me, knowing that somewhere above, Andrew was doing the same, and that felt like enough for now. I woke up to the train slowing again, not stopping this time, just easing into a station. Dawn was creeping in through the window, turning the darkness outside into a washed-out blue. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then I remembered everything at once. The breakdown, the conversation, Andrew. I glanced up. He was already awake, propped slightly on one elbow on his bunk, watching the window like he'd been up for a while. "Morning," he said softly, like he didn't want to scare the moment away. "Morning," I replied, my voice rough from sleep. We stayed like that for a second, suspended between night and day. The intimacy felt different now, quieter, steadier. Less charged, but deeper somehow. Like what had happened between us had survived sleep. "This is us, isn't it?" he said eventually. "Last stop before Berlin." I nodded. "Guess so." The train pulled fully into the station, brakes hissing, people already standing in the corridor with bags and informing phone calls. Reality came rushing back and all at once. Andrew climbed down from his bunk and grabbed his jacket. I noticed the way he moved, unhurried, but not hesitant either, like he'd made some internal decision during the night. "So," he said, turning to me, "what's your plan once you're off the train?" I shrugged. "Crash at my sister's for a bit. Pretend I'm just visiting while I figure out what comes next." He smiled knowingly. Temporary lives are underrated. I stood up too, suddenly aware of how close we were again. Not forced by a broken train this time. Chosen. Outside, the platform buzzed with early morning energy. Commuters, travelers, the smell of coffee drifting in through an open door somewhere down the carriage. Andrew hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "Signal's back," he said, "which means this is the part where we either exchange numbers or do the tragic, maybe someday thing." I laughed. "I hate the maybe someday thing." "Good," he said, handing me his phone. "So do I." I typed my number in, fingers steady, then handed it back. He checked the screen, saved it, and for a second his thumb hovered there, like he was tempted to text me immediately just to prove it was real. John, he said, more seriously now, I don't know what this turns into. I'm not pretending I do. I'm not asking you to, I replied. But, he continued, I'd like to find out. Slowly, without pretending this was just a night. My chest tightened in that familiar, hopeful way. Yeah, I said. I'd like that too. The doors opened. People started filing out. We stepped onto the platform together, the cool morning air hitting my face, grounding me. For a moment, we just stood there, bags at our feet, looking at each other like two men who'd met at exactly the wrong time, or exactly the right one. Andrew leaned in, not quite a hug, not quite a step back. Coffee, he asked. Not now. Soon. Like a real first thing. I smiled. Yeah, I'd like that. He nodded, then did something unexpectedly tender. He squeezed my shoulder, just once like a promise instead of goodbye. I'll text you, he said. I'll be waiting, I replied. He walked off down the platform, blending into the crowd, but I didn't feel that familiar hollow ache of something slipping away. This didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning that had earned its patience. As I shouldered my bag and headed in the opposite direction, my phone buzzed. Andrew, train breakdowns might be my new favorite thing. I smiled to myself, stepping into the morning, already knowing this story wasn't over. Berlin didn't ease me in. It never does. It hit fast and loud and unapologetic, like a city that assumes you'll either keep up or get out of the way. The first few days blurred together. My sister's couch, jet-lag naps in the afternoon, long walks with no destination just to burn off nervous energy. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped a little, embarrassingly so. Andrew didn't text right away, not because he disappeared, but because when he finally did, it felt intentional. Andrew, coffee tomorrow? Near Friedrichstraße? E. No train breakdowns required. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, then typed back. Me. Tomorrow works. I promised not to rely on fate this time. The CAF was small and bright, all pale wood and plants pretending they weren't surviving on sheer willpower. I got there early, 15 minutes early, and immediately regretted it. Too much time to overthink. Too much time to replay the train in my head and wonder if daylight would make everything smaller. It didn't. Andrew walked in right on time, jacket slung over one shoulder, hair slightly messier than I remembered. He scanned the room, spotted me, and smiled in that quiet, familiar way, like we were picking up a conversation that had simply paused. Hey, he said. Hey, I replied, standing up without realizing I'd done it. We hugged. Brief. Natural. The kind of hug that confirms something instead of testing it. Coffee turned into two. Then a walk. Then sitting by the river with paper cups gone cold between our hands. We talked about practical things, apartments, work, neighborhoods, but the undercurrent never disappeared. Every so often there'd be a pause where one of us would look at the other just a second too long. At some point, Andrew said, You know what I like about this? What? It doesn't feel rushed, but it doesn't feel hypothetical either. I nodded. Yeah, it feels chosen. That word again. As the sun dipped lower, the city softened. Andrew checked his phone, then looked back at me. I don't want to overstep, he said carefully, but I live about 10 minutes from here. If you want to keep talking somewhere quieter. I didn't hesitate this time. I like that. His apartment was minimal but warm, books stacked instead of shelved, a plant that was clearly doing its best, soft lighting that made the space feel lived in. We kicked off our shoes, sat on opposite ends of the couch at first, like we were pretending not to notice the tension still humming between us. Eventually, he shifted closer. John, he said, voice low, can I? I nodded. He kissed me, slow, unhurried, like he wasn't afraid of the moment ending if he didn't rush it. His hand rested at my waist, steady, familiar, somehow, even though it was new. When we pulled back, our foreheads touched. So, he murmured, still glad the train broke down? I smiled. Yeah, I said. I really am. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, something settled into place. Not fireworks, not promises. Just two men choosing to stay. And for now, That was more than enough. The next few weeks slipped into a rhythm neither of us named out loud, but both of us felt. Andrew and I didn't rush into anything dramatic. No declarations, no labels forced too early. We texted, met for coffee that turned into dinners, walked for hours without realizing how far we'd gone. Sometimes we talked about deep things, past relationships, fears, the quiet damage of expectations. Other times we argued passionately about music or which parts of the city felt the most honest. What surprised me most was how easy it felt. Not effortless. Real things never are, but steady. Like we weren't trying to impress each other anymore. Like we'd skipped past that stage on the train and landed somewhere more grounded. One night, a few weeks in, we were back at his place again. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The city blurred into reflections and movement. We were sitting on a couch, legs tangled this time without pretense, a movie playing that neither of us was watching. Andrew reached for my hand, thumb brushing slowly over my knuckles. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. I turned toward him. "Always." "I think," he said carefully, "that night on the train, it cracked something open in me. Not because of romance or coincidence or any of that." He looked at me, but because for the first time in a long while, I felt seen without having to explain myself. My chest tightened. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Me too." He smiled. Not big, not dramatic. Just real. "I don't want to lose that." "You won't," I said. "Not if we're honest when it gets harder." He leaned in and kissed me again. Slower than before. Familiar now. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "You know," he said, "we should probably thank the universe at some point." "For the broken train?" "For the pause," he corrected. "For forcing us to stop." I thought back to that night. The flickering lights, the silence, the strange safety of talking to a stranger who didn't feel like one for long. "Yeah," I said. "I think I needed that stop more than I realized." Later, lying beside him, listening to the rain, I understood something I hadn't back then. The train breaking down hadn't changed our lives by itself. It just gave us the space to notice we were ready for something different. Sometimes, all it takes is being stuck long enough to finally choose where you want to go next.